Oh, shoot. Hold on. No, we're not. Cancel. Okay.
Do the voice.
Oh, yes. Hold on. This was yesterday. This is Jim Zanza's yesterday. The recording has begun. Oh, recording in progress.
Gary, turn on your microphone.
Are we going now?
You heard her say recording in progress.
All right, I will bring to a close our remedial reading committee and remedial math committee, and then we'll call the meeting to order of the Legislative Committee, Dunn County Board of Supervisors, Wednesday, January 10th, 2024, 2:30 p.m. or so in room 54 of the Dunn County Government Center. Call to the roll.
Everyone is present except for John Calabrese and Randy Prochnow.
Thank you, and I would just make a note that the Highway Commissioner will make a presentation in Randy's absence if it's needed. So, next order of business is the approval of the minutes for May 10th, 2023.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, corrections, additions?
He's the second.
Yeah.
You got that? Okay.
Yeah. Diane Morehouse moved. Vaughn Hedlund seconded. And now we're going to vote, I guess. Here we go. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Oh, one down. There we go. I'm not aware of any public comments. Evidently you are. Ms. County Manager, go ahead.
I have an email from Terry Nichols, which says, comments to the Legislative Committee. FYI, on January 9th, the day of your meeting, both the Senate Committee on Education and the Senate Committee on Universities and Revenue were canceled. I do not know why, but the Assembly Committee on Universities and Colleges does meet on January 10th. It looks like February will be the last time for new bills. Representative Moses called me this week to check in with me and told me that March is more of a deadline. I can tell you that Representative Moses has received phone calls from seniors worrying about being taxed out of their homes. I sent an email earlier this week and hit all the major players in the Senate and Assembly committees. What do I have to lose? I hope the WCA's conference in February puts a punch in for taxation fairness, as this is not a partisan issue whatsoever. I applaud Dunn County for the Legislative Committee, as I quickly found out that not all counties have this committee. I've expressed my concern that the Legislative Reference Bureau should have a final draft of the new bill on Representative Moses soon. A desk soon. Representative Moses stated he will follow up with his staff. As an individual resident of Dunn County, what pull do I have? My only answer is that we elect local officials to represent us in Madison. It should be the allegiance to the constituents over a caucus, right? Sincerely, Terry Nichols, Town of Colfax.
Thank you, Chris. Any other comments that we're aware of? Hearing and seeing none, we move on. The next order of business is consideration of actions to be taken by the Legislative Committee. Number one, approval of the 2024 Dunn County Legislative Agenda. I think you should have had that in your packet.
And I can bring it up for you. Just give me 2 seconds.
That would be very nice.
How do I make it bigger? Oh, down here.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Okay, so it's by group. I think many of the department heads are here, or several department heads are here, but as well as the standing committees that chairs of the standing committees that overheard these issues as they were brought to them. So, however you wish to proceed.
Does anyone here, a committee head or department head or committee head, have any additions to make to this list that you have in front of you?
I think I think we had 2 items on the legislative agenda, I believe, last year. I don't see them on this one. Supporting broadband, I think, in rural tourism, I believe, were the 2,
Mhm.
and I don't see them here anymore.
I don't know that they came to the community resources and tourism, but we can certainly add them back
Okay.
easily.
So if I'm understanding you, county board member, do you want to make that motion?
I guess that would be a motion to add the previous items from the CR&T committee regarding broadband expansion and rural tourism.
We have a motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
We have 2 seconds, so we're moving right along. I'll open it up for discussion now. Is there any discussion regarding this? I'm going to hazard a guess it's pretty cut and dried, because if we had it in before, I don't know why we wouldn't want to put it in again. Yes, Supervisor Quinn.
The only thing I can think of, well, I mean, we might want to, I don't know if it's probably too late at this point in time, but it may be that there are there broadband details that we'd want to emphasize, Jim, you think?
The only thing I can think of is maybe making reference to like the BEAD planning grants and be more specific than the general broad
Right.
pardon the
Right.
French, broadband
And that's something that
item we
we
had.
could do in our meeting, right?
So, yeah, so I would say maybe after this meeting, Supervisor Zons, you and I could just sit down, we could look at the language, include it, and then it would go in for exec in the next meeting.
I like that idea.
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask a
And then if I
question?
could, one other thing.
Yep, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Supervisor Quinn will finish, and then Supervisor Morehouse will tag
Well,
off.
with regard to rural tourism, the only issue that sort of bubbled up that I'm aware of is the whole debate about serving alcohol at wedding barns. Have you been following that at all?
Oh yeah, I'm a member of a wedding and event professionals group, and they're very actively upset about it.
Right.
But I don't know if it's, unless we want to have a discussion about it here as a committee, and if enough people know enough about it.
Yeah. that's fine.
I mean, I know a lot about it and could enlighten everybody, but it does affect rural tourism. For those who don't know, the legislature passed a pretty comprehensive update to liquor laws regarding it affected craft brewers and a lot of things, but also it impacted rural wedding barns in particular, because it limited the amount of a number of events they can have as to only 6 per calendar year, which pretty much will put most of them out of business. Requires them to get a liquor license, which is kind of out of reach, and some other stuff and it got pushed through pretty quickly. So, and that directly does impact not only rural tourism, but it impacts economic development. So it would be worthy to consider, some sort of, depending on what the consensus of this group is, and then the entire county board, how we feel about that.
Any other comment?
Just
Supervisor Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question, and it's probably already, you probably already thought about this, but wondering if on the broadband, if the broadband task force had any specific recommended actions, or other than just affirming the need for universal broadband?
Yeah, I don't know that we've we actually have our first meeting tomorrow. So we'll probably discuss a lot of stuff, but I mean, there's a lot of things that are already in motion with the bead planning grants and looking at the maps that are currently in place. So, you know, by the time this gets in front of the legislature, it might be that we're already behind the situation with how things are quickly kind of moving when it comes to some aspects of broadband. So it still might be that that it might just be I'll have to look at what our language was for last time, whether it needs to even reference this new funding opportunity that's there.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Headland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, question, I guess the liquor law question that you brought up in terms of requiring them to get a liquor license. Are they looking at the fact that, you know, some of the rural municipalities, so to speak, or townships have a limit or have no capacity?
Honestly, they didn't look at any of that. So it was there are some real big lobbyists as far as like the Tavern League and things like that really wanted they wanted their interests protected but recognized that craft brewers wanted to have better representation with the current laws. The wedding barn industry is not organized. So they do not have an advocate. So it was easy to kind of, from what I hear, push them aside a little bit. And this also got passed really quickly. It essentially got passed in a day. So there was not a lot of time for anybody to react to it. There were several public meetings. And then it suddenly came up on a calendar and got passed in a day, because I actually had Senator Jeff Smith scheduled to speak to the wedding and event planners group. And instead of him addressing their concerns to take back to the committee that he sits on, he was reacting to the fact that the bill had passed the previous day. And so there's chances for modifications to that, because there are a number of, obviously, you know, small business owners upset about the fact that this, you know, could be business ending for them. So
If I might, I think given the timeline for passing legislative agenda, what we might best do is essentially do a line from that would have to then go to CR&T for, I guess, backward approval. I think we could just, since it's on the agenda here, the legislative agenda is on our agenda here, we can pass something we can put something in the language right now from this committee. If we don't do it today, it'll have to go through CR&T and come forward again, and that might be time intensive. So perhaps something as simple as a request for the legislature to revisit that piece of legislation.
That sounds reasonable, Kelly. We're
Mr. Chair.
that's what I thought.
Supervisor Kinnear, please.
Yeah, in relation to what Supervisor McCullough said, and what Chris said about maybe she and Jim getting together to write something up. I have trouble voting on something that I can't see. You know, it's just bad optics. Besides, they watch us vote. Oh yeah, they voted on it. So however we work it, whether we say, yeah, let's go ahead and do something, I don't really want to vote on something that isn't here. And it sounds like it isn't really ready anyway, but some changes need to be made.
If I might respond, if I understood Kelly correctly, what he's suggesting is that we just pass a resolution or asking the legislature to revisit this. Am I understanding you correctly, Kelly?
Yeah, I think we'll have to consider it separately from re-including the broadband material from last time.
Okay.
And I think re-including the broadband material is a fairly simple vote because this body has voted on it before, and so has CR&T. So I think we'd want to finish that amendment, and then if we're going to have action today on the wedding barn issue, then I would say make it very simple, just like one sentence. We would like the legislature to revisit this piece of legislation with an eye to the concerns of the wedding barns and small brewers or something like that. And that would be very simple, very easy to draft up and add today. Otherwise, it'll probably need to go through CR&T and back up the chain.
Jim, would it be fair to say if you ask someone else about that piece of legislation, that they might give a completely different view of it than you, depending where they're coming from?
Sure, if they're a big bar or venue, probably.
Okay, but there's another viewpoint.
Mhm.
And
Oh, yeah.
I think before I'm going to vote on it, I'd like to hear both of them, although I have been following it
Yeah.
for quite some
Yeah,
time.
I've been
So,
following it pretty closely, and I don't have a dog in this particular fight, but I think Jim's characterization of the process is pretty spot on.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I guess it boils down to if Kelly's suggestion is agreeable to Supervisor Kinnear, if he could support it going that way. If not, and the other way of looking at it is that we shouldn't act this quickly and we should do a little more research before we act on it. Is that a fair characterization?
I think the way Supervisor McCullough put it as to let them revisit it with a mind towards looking at the viewpoint of the wedding barns. That's not saying we think that they should change it completely. It's just saying, look at it again, would you please?
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that at all.
Then I think, do we have to revisit the fact that we approved? Well, no, I guess we're having discussion here. Do we want to redo or retract the motion and rephrase it?
I think procedurally what would be cleaner is to vote on Jim's motion to re-include the broadband rural tourism pieces that had already been passed through CR&T once. And then as a separate motion, include in this and ask for the legislature to revisit the piece of legislation.
That clarifies it for me. Does it clarify it for everybody else here? So I think we could go ahead and have the vote on the broadband and rural tourism. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Same sign.
Aye.
Motion passed. And now I would entertain a motion following the lines of what Kelly suggested there. Would someone care to make that?
I will go ahead and make the motion to include in our legislative agenda to ask the legislature to revisit the piece of legislation in question. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but we can include that later. With an eye to considering the needs and interests of the wedding barn and event plan.
Is there a second? Supervisor Kinnear seconds. Any discussion? And just as a point of information, I don't know if they gave any thought to the fact that I know villages can have picnic licenses. Can townships? Well, I think there's no limit. You can give them a 6-month picnic license if you want, So therefore, you can get around this because I know in our little village, that's what we're doing for the softball association rather than making them a business, where it incurs a lot of cost. So there's more than one way to skin a cat. I'm just bringing that up that they have that ability, although
I have no idea if that was addressed in this because it got into a whole bunch of different areas. So it might be worthy to see if that's something that's going to have to change at the village level too.
Well, I wouldn't be in favor of that, but we'll find out. the object is to be user-friendly, but I'm just going to hazard a guess. We can send all the suggestions we want, but that's above our pay grade. People above us are making that decision. And we really have, I guess we can tell them what we'd like them to do, but that's about all we can do, so.
Yeah,
Supervisor
and
Headler.
I think you're right, Mr. Cena. But of course, with the thought that municipalities and townships and cities and whatever can pass liquor laws and liquor license laws and the number of trained or, acceptable bartenders and registered and so forth, but they can't go past the state limit,
Also, this legislation affects bartender licensing as well.
It does. Okay.
So,
I'll have to look into that. I've had that license since '82, so I'm gonna look into that. All right, we've had some discussion. Is there any more? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much for the thoughtful discussion and for bringing it up, Jim.
I don't think I brought it up.
Tom brought it up, I think, or
Oh.
someone brought it up.
Tom did.
The silent assassin brought it up. Tom. All right.
No, it will be unwelcome in the Tavern League.
That's right.
You mentioned.
Well,
I was trying to slip under the radar there.
yeah. Well, bring me along. I can lobby
Yeah.
for you. All right. Is there any other changes or additions, corrections you'd like to make to this? If not, I would, anybody back here? Seeing none, hearing none.
Wait, excuse me?
Yes, please,
Chair,
Supervisor Vogel, I'm sorry.
I had a question because is one of the agenda items the same? So letter I under land use and A under administration about the land information program?
Yep.
So I was just wondering which place should it belong or does it need to be in both?
Well, it came forward out of, it did come forward out of both. Dan's going to speak to us. Are there?
And we're going to have Dan Dunbar talk on this, okay?
Thanks, I was just curious.
Rachel also had her hand up, I saw. That particular request is an increase to fees collected by the Register of Deeds, which reports to the PR&D committee. Those fees then go to the Land Information Office to be dispersed. Land Information Office is under the Committee on Administration. So to make sure that everybody was seeing it right, we ran it through both committees so that both committees could be able to see that and move it forward. And that's how it got to how it got. So how it shows up on the specific report, I don't think matters too much to us. But
It seems like it might fit better under administration than under PRD. I mean, feels that way to me.
Yeah, that would be reasonable. Alternatively, we could simply amend the legislative agenda to note that comes forward from two committees, consolidate it to one line, but make it one line coming from two committees.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there is at least one other duplication about groundwater testing from Health and Human Services and PR&D.
Similar, like I say.
The language is not exactly the same, but they're very similar for groundwater testing.
Okay, yep.
And maybe that's the answer to both of
Same-
those as
same
well.
with both of them,
Yeah.
That's an easy change to make.
I would need a motion then to make these changes to the legislative.
We're not talking about making changes. We're simply saying that when we sent these, we'll know what they are.
So The motion would be to consolidate the duplicative items into a single agenda item coming forward from both of the relevant committees.
Well, that's how I would look at it. And it would also, wouldn't it be on the physical stuff that we'd present
Yep.
to the legislative? We'd want to be as clear and as we could be about where we're coming from.
If that motion suits what we need in terms of consolidating it down to the appropriate minimum number of lines, then I would propose that motion as earlier stated.
Is there a second to that motion? Supervisor Headland, thank you. We'll open it up for the discussion. And Supervisor Vogel, I'd like to thank you for being a hawkeye on that for us. Thank you. If there is no discussion, Supervisor Quinn?
I just want to clarify the motion, Kelly, if you could.
Oh, sure. I would move to amend the legislative agenda as presented to consolidate duplicative items and cite them as coming forward from both appropriate committees.
Do you want the specific?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Supervisor Morehouse.
It seems to me that that they could remain as written in the legislative agenda, and as we do presentation to the legislators to point out that while the language is similar, this arose from two separate standing committees, i.e. it is of importance. So I don't see the need for a separate motion.
A point well taken.
I guess it's my editor who prefers not to have duplicative language and also assumes that shorter is easier to read and more likely to be read. But I'm fine either way.
I would agree with Kelly with the caveat that we put that it's coming from two different, and I guess when we talk to our legislatures, this is important to our county. It's not only from this department, but it's from this committee also. I think does that make sense?
You could put another heading where it's like, right now we have like Committee on Administration, this Committee on Health and Human Services, and then you could have a number 4, Committees on Administration and Health and Human Services, and then put that one item that way.
That's what I would have intended to do.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's more or less what I intended with the language, with the motion. That is
So, just to get this straight here, Supervisor Kelly, you want to adopt the language that Supervisor Zahn just gave us?
Yes,
Motion.
I believe that is a reasonable interpretation of the application of the original motion. So probably the original motion doesn't need to be adjusted, but I think that's the way to formally present it in the document.
We have a motion. I'd entertain a second to this.
It is.
Oh, Supervisor Headland, seconded. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Is there any other issues that we can see or find here?
Just a question under.
Supervisor Headland, yeah.
I think it's under Health and Human Services,
Yes, sir.
item G, preserving the authority of the health. Is there some sort of challenge against that going
There has
on?
been continuing, I don't think, oops, sorry. Brain dead. There's been continuing discussion about that. This is the third time, I believe, that this has been included in our legislative agenda.
And it's still.
It's still a question.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Additions, subtractions? Hearing none, then our order of business is to approve this and send it on to the county board. Is that correct? We would approve adoption and send it on to the county board. I'd entertain a motion to that effect. Supervisor's on, moves, who's the second here? Or did I miss somebody? Supervisor Headland seconded it? Is any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
I,
Opposed, the same sign. The motion is carried. Our next meeting, as you see on our agenda, we'll schedule it as needed. If we have some items that become important in our eyes, we'll schedule a meeting. If not, it's no sense having a meeting if we don't have anything to discuss.
So the question that I would have for the group is what you believe would be the optimal timing to invite the legislature? Given that it's a non-budget year, it's a little less time sensitive, but I know that there's times when they're in session and they're not. What are you thinking? Last year we held the meeting with them, I believe the first week in February, but it was a budget year. Other years we've gone the last week of January, we've gone, I believe, up until close to the end of February. So just in terms of what you're thinking.
If there's a magic pill here, we want to have it when we can get the best of response, you know.
According to Senator Smith, they will be out of session by April. So obviously before then. Yeah. Earlier.
Perhaps sometime in February then. Well, just a quick question. You and Chris were going to make sure the language on the CR&T pieces was correct. There are significant revisions that'll have to come before exec in February.
I'm not looking at any, like, I'm thinking that looking at what we did in 2023, that we can just move that forward with no change.
Okay, great.
So I wondered about, I thought about this one day. What about doing the legislative agenda with the legislatures before the county board meeting in February? It generally doesn't take much more than an hour versus another evening giving up if we met at 6 instead of 7. Just as a thought.
That seems entirely reasonable to me.
As long as we have snacks.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring that up. If, does that sound reasonable to all the board members here?
Yeah.
I would like to just throw this out there. Jim coached me up, but now I'm going to speak on it. I would be in favor of having some sort of refreshments and having it be more or less informal or as welcoming as we could make it, if it makes sense to you. Deathly silence. I guess it wasn't a good idea.
No, I think, didn't we discuss this last year as a possibility to maybe make it a little bit more engaging? I would say that some of the better conversations I had during the WCA legislative conference last year were at the social mixer afterwards, and getting a chance to talk with people. And I know that I spent quite a bit of time talking with Representative Moses at that venue, but I'm not dismissing at all out of hand what you're suggesting.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
it
Kinnear.
seems like get some food out there at 5:30 and mixing around, and then at 6 o'clock, do any presentations we want. Maybe a little less formal than last year. I thought they were talked at quite a bit. And, but it seemed like a good idea, Jim. Get some food out there. It's supper time anyway.
Yeah, it could be a combination of what you're saying and having a regular presentation, but having a mixer beforehand, where they can, and then a mixer afterwards where it'd be like a half hour before the regular county board meeting.
All right. So if we invited people to show up anytime after 5 p.m. to have a bite to eat and to chat, we'll notice it appropriately. And then we could do a presentation at 6. And then, or the other way around, we could do a presentation earlier and then have chat. But I guess I was thinking, give people an opportunity to grab a bite to eat, gather, have some conversations, and then do a presentation and purposefully maybe limit that in the sense of amount of talking at people we would do, so we could fit it in a half an hour or less, and then have that half an hour between then and the start of the county board meeting.
I like
Yeah,
that.
that seems, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the social part ahead of time, where you can kind of soften them up a little bit, talk to them, make a connection, and then, things will go better over coffee and food. I know that.
Too bad we can't serve beer.
I don't know that we can't. So that's what you'll do then, Ace County Manager, right?
That's how we'll notice it, yes.
Okay. That takes care of our next, or our legislative meeting. Am I missing anything? Anything want to be added? If not, I think we've concluded our business this evening, or early afternoon, late afternoon. Having said that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming, including the staff.
So since, is the exec meeting noticed as 3:30?
It is.
Yes, sir.
Okay,